There we go. Nice.
Loma, 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 loma. See me, I'm swanky now. See me, I'm fed up of this thing. You want me bust your back, you want me ram your dance. You make me back so far. You telling me no hat, you tell me no slipper, you tell me no short pants. So when you call me for, I come out to blow.
Hi, folks, and good evening. Hi, Janelle Smith. How y'all doing? Hi, Tisa, Nikisha, Patrice, Janelle Smith, Carol. How are you doing? Thank you so much for coming and spending what is it? Dimashqra evening with me. Yes, thanks for coming and spending Dimashqra evening with me. So this evening, with this thing, boy, how it just disappears. So it should not have. Right. So this evening, we go in and do a lot of commentary, a range of things. We have law and legislation to talk about. We have to talk about a very defamatory post that was making the rounds. There are a number of persons I don't pay attention to on social media, and the post was brought to my attention. And the post is linked to a story that we would have done right here, covered right here in August, very early August 2021. And of course, it would have been linked to the Commissioner of Police, because you all know that I did a number of lives, a series of lives on the Commissioner of Police last year. So one of the issues was the Eve George story, a missing iPhone, and what happened as a result of this missing iPhone and the Professional Standards Bureau. So there is that. Then we had to talk about Hoth Spoths and the fact that people get very upset and angry when I make comments and talk about and refer to things and places, not things, places as Hoth Spoths. But before we get into those other issues, I have a guest this evening. It's been a while since I've had a guest, so I'm very happy to bring on said guest. I have a young lawyer. His name is Peter Carter, and he is going to help me discuss a groundbreaking ruling that happened 2 weeks ago. So bail is something that has been a huge issue here. Who gets bail, how they get bail, and I don't know how many of you have ever had family members who ended up in our justice system and having to go on remand. But bail is a very nerve-wracking sort of situation. So we have several levels of Dimashqra here this evening. We will have some serious commentary, right? Serious topics. And of course, I will have to bring some special verses for the North stand, for the Northwest stand, for the Grand stand, and of course, for other people who can't stand at all. So Friday, I was supposed to do a live with you all, and I have to apologize for not being here. But what happened is, and he dared me to tell all of the truth, so I'm going to tell you all the truth. A red man from Arima caused me to bruise my knee, right? And after he caused me to bruise my knee was so swollen, and I was in so much pain, I couldn't possibly sit down and do a whole live with you all. So we could not be in a pod on Friday talking the things because this red man from Arima caused me to bruise my knee. However, the swelling has since gone down, and I'm in a position now to come and talk the things with all you. So let me bring on my friend Peter. Peter, thank you so much for agreeing to talk about this topic this afternoon, because I know it's a sensitive issue, is a sensitive area, right? So I guess the first thing I should ask you is, how long have you been a lawyer, Peter? Oh, just now. I muted you by accident. Oh my goodness. There we go. All right. So good evening, Peter.
Everybody hearing me?
Yes.
Good evening.
Everybody hearing you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Right. To answer your first question, I've been practicing for almost a decade now.
And you're in criminal law. I have that correct, yes?
Yes, mainly in criminal law.
What other kinds of other areas of law are you involved in?
Um, a lot of constitutional law, public law, so judicial reviews. I do practice some civil law as well. In fact, I'm trying to branch off more into civil right now, but
Okay.
for the last 9 years, I've been practicing mainly criminal law.
Now, 2 weeks ago, um, I read a ruling. I read the executive summary, and then within the last couple of days, I read the entire thing, the background and all of the um, case references. And it was a ruling made by the appeal court, and we know that, well, the chief justice sits as he's at the head of the appeal court. Yes.
Yes, well, he's the president of the courts. He can actually also sit as a high court judge, never uses that power, but he is the head, and certainly when he sits with other persons in the court of appeal, he is always what we call the president, which is the head of the panel.
Right.
So he was the head of that panel.
So I read the ruling, and in it, there's a change for persons who have um, who are, who have been charged with murder. They can now get bail. Now, bail has been a big contentious issue here. We have, under any number of attorney generals, we have had legislation be put in place to restrict which persons and what kinds of persons can get bail. And for a very long time, if you were charged with murder, no bail. I think also if you're charged with piracy and hijacking, no bail as well. So here is this new
Yeah.
ruling that is basically saying, if I was charged with having committed a murder, there's a possibility that I can receive bail. So if you can just walk us through what pertained before and what this means now.
Okay, well, we start some time ago, as far back as 1994, where there was an amendment to the Bail Act, which set out in what is now the first schedule of the Bail Act, a category of offences where the legislature, parliament at the time, implemented one could not get bail for. So that's the starting point, more or less, that this amendment in 1994 to the Bail Act said, all right, you get charged for murder, no bail. That's what pertained before. What's happened with this ruling, and it's important to note, as the Attorney General has come out thereafter and said that the state does intend to appeal it to our highest court, the Privy Council. So, in some regard, the issue is still not finally disposed of and determined, but the ruling of the Court of Appeal is still very significant. It's an issue which, if the parties thought it was necessary, could have probably even leapfrogged straight to the Privy Council, but it was important that our Court of Appeal considered the submissions, and gave its ruling and judgment on the matter. So, very simply, what the Court of Appeal did in this matter, it looked at that amendment, the 1994 amendment, and considered whether it was constitutional or unconstitutional. And there are a lot of things that make law constitutional or within the Constitution or infringing the Constitution.
Before we get to what, constitutional and unconstitutional, when I hear phrases like constitutional and unconstitutional, I'm thinking about people's rights and laws
Yes.
infringing on people's rights. Now, we
Yes.
live in a society where people tend to think the minute you have been accused of a crime, you did the crime. That's how we tend to think here. That's the mindset here. We're not really into
Indeed.
innocent until proven guilty, especially with crimes that are as violent as murder. So when you're talking about constitutional and unconstitutional, how does that apply to something like murder?
Well, murder is just one of several offenses, and it's probably to the top of the hierarchy of offenses. And there's some special considerations, both in terms of the offense, its penalties, etc. But starting from the very basic starting point, yes, we in Trinidad and Tobago tend to approach it as soon as the police charge a person, put their picture up and start to post all type of information about the person. This person did it, but that is not our legal system. That is not our justice system. And just in the same way as there's a process for the police to investigate and then eventually charge, there's a process for a person to be found guilty or found not guilty. And it's important to say it like that, not guilty, to be found not guilty, because it's some people think that a not guilty equals innocent, but it's all has to do with looking at what our law requires and what the justice system requires. And the justice system doesn't require anyone to prove themselves innocent, but that the state hasn't been able to prove you guilty. So this is where bail comes in as a very important consideration, because it takes times for matters to be tried in the courts. It will not happen the same day that you get charged by the police that your murder is going to be going before a jury or a judge alone. So with this whole process that it takes from charge to the hearing and trial of an offense, the person needs to either be able to come back before the court or to be able to have their matter tried. And bail is the process that allows a person in this spillover between you've been charged by the police, your matter, you're not going to go to trial immediately. Bail is the process of getting a person back to court. A lot of people see bail as, or the grant of bail as, a process of, oh, well, this song like he do it, why they grant him bail? But that is not what bail is about. Bail is not a gift. It's not a reward. It's just one of the many different processes of the legal system and of a criminal trial.
We have a question here. Devon Welsh has asked, and
Mhm.
I'm adding it to the live feed here. Can persons on a murder charge apply for bail immediately?
Right. Now, I don't want to say too much to this. I am not looking to give anyone legal advice on this forum. What I can say, and this has been published and publicized in the media, the various print and electronic media, that there's what is called a bridging order in place right now in the Court of Appeal, where the issue of whether their decisions in Akili Charles, that's the matter that they decided, whether they become active right now or whether they're going to be suspended for some time, that's an issue still to be decided by a court of appeal. So I don't want to advise anyone of any more than what is already out there, which is there's still an issue to be decided by a court of appeal.
Now, I know in this situation with Achille Charles, because of course that is the matter that we are discussing here, because the ruling is linked to Achille Charles versus the Attorney General. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Achille
that's
would
it.
have been on remand for 9 years facing a murder charge. And he would have challenged being on remand for 9 years and not having access to bail, and pointing, and part of his case, of course, would have pointed to the mental impact and anguish and trauma of
Indeed.
having to stay in the prison system as somebody who has not yet been proven guilty by the state.
Indeed.
Right. So, in I guess one of the questions that I want to ask is, why does it take so long for cases to be called before the court? How do we end up in a situation where, let's say, a murder took place in 2010, 2011, and 2021, 2022, a person is still waiting for the matter to be tried?
Well, Akili Charles is one of a good example to demonstrate what's currently some of the problems in our justice system. Many of them are trying to be addressed by the various stakeholders, but this was one that had the usual problems and then an unusual problems. And as has been reported, and I'm sure the judgment from the Court of Appeal will be available eventually. But Akili Charles was a person stuck in a situation where his was a matter that was initially started by then Marcia Caesar. And then he was one of the persons who got wrapped up in that controversy of her elevation to the High Court.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, he had to have his matter started over. So Akili Charles is a very good example of how long these things can take, because his matter didn't eventually even reach to the High Court. His matter was thrown out by the magistrate, by finding that he had no case to answer. There was no basis of a case for which the magistrate thought he should be put on trial. So, but to get back to the broader question as to why these things take so long,
Mm-hmm.
there are a number of factors. Not all play at the same time, but some of them include, particularly for the more serious offenses, it does take time to do a proper investigation. And now, even though persons, for example, get held for a little longer than usual in a murder matter than they do, for example, for a little, um, I don't know, driving while under the influence of drink or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So a person might be held in police custody for a little while longer than that, 5 days to a week or more. The process of investigation is not completed when a person is charged. There's still things to do. There's still probably witnesses to get witness statements for. And so, when, as we have it right now, the first stage of the criminal process for serious offenses like murder is a preliminary inquiry. And that preliminary inquiry takes some time, usually because the police take a while to get all the evidence gathered and put before the court. Um, and then thereafter, a person is tried. And right now, with the pandemic, the courts, understandably, it's taking a little longer for matters to be tried in the magistrate's court.
Mm-hmm.
After that is completed, then the matter, if the person is found, if the prosecution's found that there's a prima facie case made out on the evidence. And what prima facie means is there's a case just by looking at it, this person has something to answer for.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as simple as there's no evidence at all. There's some evidence, whether it's credible or whether it's believable is another issue, but there's something that this person has to answer for. Um, so even after the preliminary inquiry is completed, those all the evidence, all the documents that have been presented in that first preliminary hearing go to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Mm-hmm.
It has to, all the evidence has to be reviewed, and then a charge has to come forward in the form of an indictment. Then you find yourself on a queue of a backlog of over 500 murder matters in the High Court. So you're then jostling for position. And by then, some persons would have expended all the money they had on legal fees. They now have to go to legal aid. They are in legal aid. They're frustrated. They come to their legal aid attorney, hot and heavy. I want to get my matter started now. I've been inside for 7 years. I've been not been able to go to trial. And sometimes an attorney, I can say it for myself, facing all this aggression and animosity,
Mm-hmm.
you start to think, okay, it's a little difficult to advise this client, this thing takes time. It's a process. We have a whole process, even in the High Court, before you get to trial. But then, so there are a number of these factors that come into play in relation to why it takes so long. And I would say one more thing that's specific and pretty unique to murder is that when you're charged with murder, you cannot plead guilty. When you're
Ah,
charged by the police with murder, you cannot say, listen, I did it, I shoot the man, I ready to be sentenced. And that's because in our jurisdiction, in our country, the penalty for murder is death, death by hanging. And it's been established since olden days, long before any of us were born, that a person can't agree to be killed. So you can't agree to be hung.
so you have to
So
plead not guilty.
you have to, in fact, no plea is entered
Okay.
at any stage. Now, there's one small exception, and that's in cases, and these types of matters are now, I think, predominantly the types of murder matters that come before the court, and that's where a person has died where an arrestable violent offense has been committed. So, for example, um, a person goes in to commit a robbery, and there's a struggle and a fight, and a person dies, a deceased. Now, in circumstances like that, what we call felony murder cases, a person can enter a plea of guilty, but only if the DPP decides that this is the basis of the case. The DPP accepts that this is a felony murder case, and in those circumstances, we will allow you to plead guilty. There's only one other exception for that, and that's for persons who were under the age of 18 at the time, because they can't be sentenced to hang. So for so this is one of the unique things in murder that means that there's this backlog. Persons cannot plead guilty to murder unless it's a felony murder case, and on that, the DPP will have to review the evidence. And understandably, a lot of the times, even if you've just been charged, the DPP will want you to go through the full preliminary inquiry, have the evidence tested, that there be cross examination before a magistrate, and have the magistrate find that there's a prima facie case. The DPP's office will often have that happen even before they come to consider whether there's a felony murder and are we going to allow this person to enter a guilty plea, or whether they're going to just proceed as charged with murder.
There's a question on the that I wanted to I wanted us to address. Let me hope I
So
can find it. So Melka Rock is asking, is consideration given to the type of murder for which one can apply for bail?
um well, with this Akili Charles ruling, and I would say if the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council agrees with the Court of Appeal and nothing changes, um, a judicial officer, and it's not limited just to a magistrate, but a judicial officer considering bail will always consider the circumstances in which it's alleged the murder will happen. So, as much as I've given you the various categorizations of how persons can plead guilty to murder or can't, um, I would think that that is one of the factors that would go into a judicial officer's mind when deciding whether to grant bail or not. Is this a felony murder type of case? Is this a murder where there's pure intention to kill? Is this a murder where there's some evidence of self defense? Is this a murder where the person was a child at the time of the alleged commission of the offense? These are factors which I'm sure a judicial officer will have to take into consideration if things remain as they are right now from the Court of Appeal.
So, Peter, just before we end, let me ask you this. You're a criminal lawyer. Do you have any clients that this new ruling, this new judgment is likely to have an impact on?
Too many to mention, and I certainly wouldn't mention them for privilege. But no, I think pretty much anyone practicing criminal law, certainly persons practicing criminal law in the magistrates court, And in the High Court, our phones were ringing off the hook when this ruling came out, and for some days thereafter. Um, I would say that there are considerations on both sides. There's good reason for persons to be apprehensive. Um, but for my part, I think that the ruling of the Court of Appeal is sound. We will see whether the board agrees with that, my assessment. That's only my opinion. But it is quite a welcomed ruling, certainly by defense attorneys, because one of I spoke earlier about of constitutional rights and things being unconstitutional. Our constitution specifically provides for the right to bail, and specifically provides that the legislature, parliament, should not infringe upon or should not interfere or tamper with that right to bail. And that was somewhat recognized, not even somewhat, very much recognized in this decision. Um, and by contrast, we do not have a right to a speedy trial. And I think that is one of the kickers and the real downsides of our criminal justice system. Because if a person accused of murder knew definitively that they could be tried in 3 years, 4 years, I think as a society, we might be able to accept, and maybe persons in society accept no matter how long a person stays inside, murder is murder. But I think just from a humanitarian point of view, spending 9 years, 10 years, 15 years, 18 years, I've done murder matters where persons have been waiting 18 years to have a final determination of their matter. But without the counterbalancing mechanism of a right to a speedy trial or trial to in reasonable time, I think it places heavy great importance on that right to bail. A person who is out in the free world, it's always hard to have a matter hanging over your head for a long time, but it would be a lot harder if you were stuck in the conditions that we have in our nation's prisons, rather than being able to go and watch this show on Dimanche Gras Sunday.
No, Peter, I, because I'm in support of restorative justice, I saw the
Yes.
merits of the ruling, right? Because it allows persons
Mhm.
who have not yet been determined or who have not been determined as guilty the opportunity to continue with their lives while they await trial. But there are persons, there will be members of the society that will be quite worried that somebody who has been charged with murder has the opportunity to be back out on the streets like normal amongst other persons, especially the family of victims. Because if somebody has been murdered, the family members are likely to be quite concerned. So, how does this ruling feed into those anxieties and concerns?
Those anxieties are certainly legitimate. They're anxieties that are not faced alone by persons who are charged with murder. And there are mechanisms that the state can put in place, that the courts can put in place to mitigate. I can't say certainly take away all that anxiety, but it is a lot, especially in these times, for a person to step forward and give evidence for murder. But without knowing the exact numbers, what I can say with a fair degree of confidence is that the majority of persons charged for murder are found not guilty. And if you start from that point of view, then you have to consider that the majority of persons who are charged for murder, who are spending some 10 to 15 years in prison, only to eventually be regain their liberty, there has to be a give and take. In relation to the victims, and their concerns, just as with other matters, when the person is put on bail, the court can put very clear conditions of their bail. For example, that they are not to, in any form, fashion, whether by themselves or through their relatives or other agents, make any contact, cause to make any contact with any of the witnesses. And I can tell you, because it happens regularly in other matters, persons bail um, are revoked by the courts like that on an allegation that there's been interference with witnesses. So I think some of those concerns, understandably, from a point of view that maybe think that bail, the person coming out on bail, that's it. They have freedom to do what they want. But no, there are restrictions that can be put in place. We know that recently, with the legislation and with the all the mechanisms coming in place, persons can wear monitor
I was
bracelets.
gonna ask that.
There's the
I was gonna ask if monitoring bracelets that monitor you can now be used.
Yes, yes, those are now can now be used, and everything is put in place, and there are persons who are coming out on bail for the for other offenses, of course, who are have these electronic monitoring devices. There's also a piece of legislation which, to my, if I'm not mistaken, still to be proclaimed, but the Interception of Communications Act, which also allows the police and the state agencies to listen into certain types of conversations, certainly at the prisons. These can also assist in one, the preventative aspect, allowing persons who are out on bail, um, uh, having them disinclined or less eager to contact witnesses or to find ways of contacting witnesses. But there are a number of measures and mechanisms that can be used. We have, of course, our witness protection programs. And in any event, I mean, I'm not trying to be controversial, but I've always taken the position that in some regards, the state's case is better with a fearful witness not coming to court and their evidence going in
How so?
than
How
persons.
how does it become better if the witness is fearful?
Right. So we have legislation um, in this country that allows a person's witness statement or any statement of them to go into evidence if they don't want to come to court because of fear. Now, there's a certain legal test to prove that, but that is just goes to show that it's not all undone for witnesses. Now, I would never encourage a witness to pretend to be fearful. It's, I think, their civic duty to give evidence in a matter that they can. But if a witness is really fearful of giving evidence in a matter, there's been some evidence of witness tampering or the accused person trying to get onto them, the evidence can go in before a jury and go in before a judge sitting in a judge alone trial, and is there without the ability for defense counsel to cross-examine that witness, which I think is always a disadvantage rather than an advantage. So there are these things that are in place, that it is not all simple. It's not all simple solutions, but it's also not as grave or dark as it would be very easy to think that a person accused of murder getting bail, it's certainly not the end of times.
Okay. Well, you've certainly given me a lot of food for thought because now I'm thinking to myself, I want to talk to somebody, it might end up being you or other persons, about the witness protection program here and how well it works, and also the monitoring, the electrical monitoring program, and how that works as well. Because some of my some of the viewers raised important questions about murder accused being able to track down, hunt down witnesses, and of course create problems for them. And of course, that could lead to questions for the various cases, trials, etc. But I did tell you 10 to 15 minutes of your time, and I've taken up more than half an hour. So thank you so much for
That's
joining
fine.
us, Peter, and for weighing in on this appeal court ruling, the Akili Charles versus the Attorney General case, where persons accused of murder now have the option, in some measure, of applying for bail.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Okay, have yourself a good evening. Take care.
You as well.
All right, folks. So that was attorney Peter Carter, who I managed to get. Y'all remember Richard Raghubasing, my very good friend Richard Raghubasing? Well, Richard is not just an actor, not just an incredibly talented actor. Richard is the person who is in charge of legal aid in Trinidad and Tobago. So I reached out to him, and because I know that legal aid does a lot of work with criminal cases, especially persons who are on murder charges. And I asked, Richard, can you help me find someone to talk to about this new ruling from the appeal court? And it is a very, very, very impactful ruling. It remains to be seen exactly how it's going to play out here, how it's going to be applied. But as time goes along, we're going to deal up. We're gonna take a look at it and of course discuss it here. So the next thing I want to talk about is Eve George. So last year, and the person that I have to interview, line up yourself, are going to be calling you just now. Last year, this is a young lady here, right? Let me smaller. No, that's not what I want to do. I want that, and then I want that, then I want that. Good. Last year, I would have done a show around the 4th of August talking about a missing iPhone that was linked to this young lady, and the fact that the iPhone led to a whole bunch of confusion and bacchanal with the then Commissioner of Police. So we shifted now from the heavy social commentary part of the program to the bacchanal social commentary part of the program. So Madam Eve, not too long after that live, would have put out a whole bunch of different posts. But the thing is this, I am very good at recognizing when people are unstable, right? So the story I had done, let me show you the because I remember I come with station diary and thing, right? Well, you know me as a woman does have me flip the screen. So I come with the station diary, and I showed you all that a report had been made, and the report had to do with larceny. I showed you all that it was about a phone that was stolen. I showed you all that there was a witness statement, and a witness statement that was done by Richard Ramdhanie. I didn't give his name, his full name at that point in time. I just went with the name Richard, because at that point in time, what was most important to me was outlining for you, the audience, that the then Commissioner of Police had a track record of using his power within the TTPS to intimidate members of the TTPS, as well as to intimidate witnesses and people involved in particular crimes, right? So Eve jump up and she feels, and Madam Eve jump up and she feels, and went on to the socials and post up a couple things. So this is one of the posts, right? This a big post from, I'm gonna tell you, long post from Eve under this heading Trinidad Madness 2, right? Then this is the rest of it, but this is the part down here that I became intrigued about. According to Eve's story, and I'm going to call my next interview shortly. Me asking only to read this. I go read out bits of it for you. So she says, while Richard worked at the office, according to the police statement, he always made sexual advances to the manager. Now, Richard Ramdhanie, in his statement to the TTPS, made it very clear that he was sexually involved with Eve. Very clear. He pointed out that there was a casual sexual relationship between the two of them. In his statement, he would have pointed out that he had sex with her when he had sex with her, etc., etc. So there was never any obfuscation on his part about whether or not there had been a physical relationship between the two of them. In this post, Eve then goes on to claim that Richard Ramdhanie is Dole Shady's nephew, and then goes on to say that I was paid and given inaccurate and false information where she is concerned. So I said to myself, because at first I wasn't going to take it on, because people sent me the link, and then I said, you know what, no, I need to at least allow Mr. Ramdhanie the opportunity to clear his name, because there's all kinds of things being said about him. So I am now going to call Mr. Ramdhanie and give Mr. Ramdhanie the opportunity to clear his good name, right? Or at least to speak to the public. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
All right. So you are on speakerphone. Just give me 2 minutes and I will begin the interview. You're in a position to talk to me, yes?
Yes. Yes.
Nice. Good. Let me just bring the mic down as close to you as possible. Now, part of the reason I did not bring him on in a studio interview the way I would normally do with other persons is I trying to help Richard protect his identity. Right? Me is not a person just be trying to endanger nobody's life. But there are a couple things that I can put up here. So, just now, I have 2 things I want to show you. This is a picture of Eve at a well-known coffee shop in the West, or in this part of Trinidad. And this is Eve on her phone, well, on her phone, and then this is the alleged iPhone that Eve claims is her iPhone, and the iPhone, the way it positioned on the table, it looking like it belonged to somebody else, right? So that is that. This is Eve and Richard. Obviously during COVID time, so everybody have on their mask and thing. Yes, all you know me. I just promise all you the hotness, right? Me don't mix matters at all. So, Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Barrett, and good evening to you viewers. How are you?
I am well. Richard, the first question I want to ask you is, how do you know Eve George?
Well, firstly, I have met Eve George at the UNC office in Devo Martin for the internal election. That's what I know.
Okay, and
She
is
introduced herself to me as a journalist with CNN, Caribbean News Now.
right. And did you all work together? What was the nature of your relationship with Eve?
We worked together for the internal elections and then for the by-elections in January 21.
Okay.
The internal elections was in December 2020, and the internal was in January 2021.
So this would have been the UNC internal elections.
Yes, the United National Congress, correct.
Right, good. So you were working together on the UNC internal elections. Were you working for any particular slate or just working on the internal elections?
We were working for the political leader, Kamala Prasad.
Okay, all right, good. Lovely. So let me go back to the issue with the cell phone. Last year, I would have done a live talking about the cell phone and what went on with the cell phone. At the point in time that I did the live, you and I had not had any sort of conversation at that point in time.
Well, at that time, I don't know who you are. I didn't know anything. No. It was, I think, a month after I was sent the live stream by one of my friends.
Right. So it is only after I did that live, because I did that live in early August, and either late August or early September would have been the first time you made contact with me, and what we would have exchanged would have been the legal action that you were attempting to take place at that point in time. You would have sent me some of the information from the legal documents, correct?
Yes, correct. I sent you the information from Kristen Williams and Company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I took against the state, not against the judge, but the state.
Right. Can you outline for me why you took legal action against the state?
Well, firstly, I don't want to call any names, but I was ordered arrested by the former commissioner for my own phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was arrested for 3 days. And my roommate Janelle was arrested for 2 days, or a day. And when she was able to bring evidence that the phone belonged to me, to the police, I was let go. Then investigation.
Richard, I need to ask, if you were able to prove that the phone belongs to you, why did it become such an issue?
Allegedly, there were information on the phone pertaining to me from the former commission, whether it was text, videos, text messages, I don't know. But while I was detained, they kept asking me for the password for the phone, were there any information on the phone? I said, if the report is a report of blasphemy, I don't have to open the phone for yours. It's a quite simple case, you know? So that's the reason.
Do you have the phone now? Is the phone in your possession or the phone is still in police possession?
The phone is in the possession of WPC Kelly Juman of the Forest Police currently.
Why did what have they indicated to you why they've not given you back the phone even though you proved that the phone was yours?
I've spoken to the Michael teacher of the Forest CID. He works with WPC Kelly Juman on the case. He said that Eve is now making claims that the opposition leader, Kamala Bissetta, has given her the phone for her use while she was involved in the internal election.
So then they've changed. So the story about the ownership of the phone has changed from it being your phone to it being a phone that Kamala Bissetta passed on to Eve?
Yes, correct. She said that the niece of the opposition leader, by the name of quote-unquote Lakshmi, gave her the phone. This Lakshmi person, the police can't find anywhere. And the Kamala Bissetta has told the police there's nobody who's her niece named Lakshmi. So, yeah.
So to the best of your knowledge, there is nobody by the name of Lakshmi, and nobody has been able to find this niece of Mrs. Bissetta with the name Lakshmi.
Yes, correct. And WPC Kelly Juman has called me multiple times to ask me who is Lakshmi. I told her time and time again, I do not know who is this Lakshmi person. I don't know who it is.
So, even though Eve has not yet been able to prove that the phone is her phone or that the phone belongs to this Lakshmi person, the TTPS continues to hold on to the phone and you don't have access to the phone.
Well, Ms. Pastor, the last time I've spoken to WPC Kelly Juman, she would have indicated to me that she works for Eve George and not for me. And her goal in this investigation is to charge me for a stolen phone. And she wants to know if I know anybody by the name of Lakshmi, which I don't. That's what she would have been the last time I was spoken to her.
But, I mean, surely a police officer would understand that she's working for the state, not necessarily working on behalf of just one person who has made an allegation. Her role would be...
I just want to clarify why I told her that I have people who have proof, who are willing to give statements, right, that the phone belongs to me and you've never had the iPhone. She said to me, I don't care about those people. And I would have also gave her those names of people and the contact number when I was arrested. She said, listen, I'm not working for you. I'm working for Eve George. Become slave in matter. And I don't care about what you have to say. Just what telling me was just how she told me.
Your identity would have been linked to that phone. You would have had, I would imagine, because I know Apple phones, you have to have an Apple account, etc., etc. What has since happened to your account and the things that would have been linked to the phone?
Well, firstly, when I was arrested and I was released, I was told that cybercrime was able to place that my SIM card was in the phone 2 years prior to Eve, or a year and something prior to the SIM card being in the phone.
But if, okay, now I get even more confused. So cybercrime was able to see that 2 years prior to Eve having the use of the phone, your SIM card was linked to the phone, and they still didn't give you back the phone?
Yes, correct. Yeah, they still didn't have to be possession of the phone. They kept asking for the password. Now, because the police have tried passwords that Eve would have given them on the phone, the iCloud became disabled. So they were not able to open the cell phone to retrieve any information information or whatever that he claims she has on phone.
Okay, so then if all of this sensitive information, because last year when I did the story, I would have pointed to the fact that there was a belief that there was sensitive information on the phone, like nudes and other things. If all of those things are now lost as a result of the changeover from one person to the other person, why is there the need to hold on to this phone still?
Because allegedly the information that Eve allegedly stays on the phone, she was allegedly having a sexual relationship with a very high profile person.
Mm-hmm.
And WPC Juman is allegedly to have some kind of personal relationship with the particular person. So unless I told, unless I don't unlock the phone, I'm not going to get that possession of my phone. Because I need to make sure that all the information has been wiped off the phone.
So you have been given an ultimatum to unlock the phone, and that's the only way you're going to get back the phone?
Either I unlock the phone in presence of the police, which is foreign police, in presence of WPC2, or I not get back the phone at all. That's what I have been told by her.
You've been told by a WPC at the Four Roads police station that if you don't unlock the phone in her presence so that they can access the information on the phone, you are not getting back your phone?
Well, yes, and I was also told that to the complainant, which is Eve George, and not for me. So either I unlock the phone, and then I do not unlock the phone and keep the information that I have been told, yeah.
Do you have a lawyer now, Mr. Ramdhanie?
I have a lawyer, Mr. Christian Williams and Company, and the senior who is liaising with the Manzano. I do.
Okay. And there's one other issue that was raised by Miss George. She claimed that you are the nephew of Dole Shady. Is there any truth to that at all?
One thing I would say, I don't know who this man Dole Shady is until I looked him up. When the year I was born, I think he would have hanged or he would have died. So I don't know who this person is. I want to make it very clear that I'm not related to him in any way or any of his family at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is a clear way of Miss George to defame my character and slander.
Okay. Now, have you had any further, I guess, run-ins with law enforcement in the country since this whole matter with the cell phone?
I have run-ins, but I was threatened by a police officer on my vehicle, black Toyota RAV4, with blue lights. He told me I'm stepping on the toes of some very high-profile people, and I better watch myself, quote-unquote, watch myself. And now, I want to say that I did make a report to the Professional Standards Bureau,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing came out of that at all, because apparently they have contacts where they know people. They didn't take in at all.
Okay. All right. Richard, I want to thank you very much for sharing your side of the story this evening with myself and my audience, because I felt that it was necessary for people to know that there was far more going on here than what had been put up in the post online.
And I just want to say, that Ms. George is not even a journalist. But I have a question.
Sure.
She said that she's currently suing you because of the last video that you did last year. Is that true?
I'm not aware of any legal action against me. There are no legal documents that have been served to me by Eve George or by anybody legally representing Eve George. So no, the same way you unaware of certain things, I am entirely unaware that there's any legal action against me from Miss George.
And one more question, please. Did anybody from the Professional Standards Bureau send you a warrant to provide whatever evidence that you have in this case to PSB?
No, nobody has reached out to me at all about anything to do with the live that I would have done last year, because all of the documents that I showed on the program are documents that are in the public domain.
Correct. Okay, Ms. Barrett, thank you so much.
All right, Mr. Ramdhanie, thank you so much for taking my call this evening.
All right, thank you again, and thank you too.
Okay, enjoy your week. Bye.
You too.
So there you have it. Miss Eve George, take she self, right? She goodly, mad self, call up my name on a post claiming that I dealing up with legal action, called up Mr. Ramdhanie's name on the post, said a slew of things, and I said to myself, you know what? I have access to this person. Let me ask him. Any of this true? Any of this making any sense to you? And he agreed to make the statement. To do an interview. The main reason we ain't put his face on here is that people currently don't know. The picture that she put up on social media is not what he looks like, and he is trying to protect his identity because he has received threats from people. And as somebody who has herself received threats from people, I could understand wanting to protect your identity in a space where you ain't sure who you could trust and who you can't trust, right? So I wanted you all to be clear about that particular issue. So now I want to move to something else. Last week, what day it was, boy? Was Thursday? Last week, Thursday, I was in the process of doing some work. So while I was doing work, I received information. All you know where I just live, right? Everybody know I live in Diego Martin's side. And some of you might be aware of how close I live to certain stush communities, right? There are a number of stush communities in my general vicinity. So if I fall out my house and roll down the road too fast, I could end up in one particular stush community. If I step out and I take 2-3 steps, I could end up in another stush community. So there are a number of stush communities around me. I live on the outskirts of multiple stush communities. So it have Victoria this, Victoria that, Westmoreland's this, Westmoreland's that, Glencoe, Bayshore, Bayview, all of those things are around me. So I get a message, and the message was, hey girl, I know you living down on that end, and I know you just be out and about and thing during the day to run your little errands and thing. It have a shootout by so-and-so community. Watch yourself. It might have police and thing there, so it might have traffic. So I take my goodly self. Let me see if I could find the screenshot of the post and put it up for you. I take my goodly self and I put up this post, right? Because at that point in time, all I was aware of was that there had been shootings. That is what I was aware of. So I put up a post immediately because I know there are other people. I live in a community, right? I have people from various parts of Diego Martin, Pity Valley, wherever it is, who I interacting with on a daily basis. So I know they're always on my page. Did I see where it is going on? So I put up the post to say, please stay clear of the West Moorings Hoth Spot today. There has been a shooting. There's been a shooting and deaths. I was not aware of who had done the shooting, who had been shot, who had died. I just know that there had been a shooting, a shootout. That's what I was told, that there was a shootout, and there had been deaths, and police was there on the crime scene. So I put up this post. Listen, me never not once thought that me saying Westmoreland is a hot spot would I have people so hot and bothered in this place. Never not once did it occur to me that people will get that upset about it, because I just talk about Hoth Spoths all the time. Ever since they find people packing bricks of cocaine in a townhouse in Westmoreland, I have been talking about Hoth Spoths, right? And how there are various Hoth Spoths in the West. And why do I talk about Hoth Spoths? Let's go back to 2011. Because the degree of angst and animosity that I saw on Thursday, I say to myself, I have to come here and talk about the hypocrisy, the classist and racist hypocrisy that is be circulating in this place when the day come. So back in 2011, Kamla and Anand and Prakash Ramadar sit down in Kamla bedroom, right? Kamala a whole address to the nation in she nighty, in she bedroom, in the house down in Philippines, right? And it had Anand Ram Logan on one side, Prakash Ramadan on the next side, and I think there was a third person in the room with she, right? So all of them pack up in Kamala bedroom on she bed while she giving this address to the nation. And she gave this address to the nation to announce that they're calling a limited state of emergency. And nobody was 100% certain what a limited state of emergency meant. And then they started to indicate that this limited state of emergency would apply to Hoth Spoths. It had no H inside it, right? Hoth Spoths. And they named 6 communities that they identified as Hoth Spoths, right? So this was August 22nd or 23rd, somewhere thereabouts in 2011. Because every year I just talk about the anniversary of the illegal state of emergency. So they call an illegal state of emergency and they started to talk about Hoth Spoths. And they named 6 communities Hoth Spoths. Now, there are a number of implications to naming a community a hotspot and to using terminology like hotspot. And in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, where politics is closely aligned to race, tribalism, and class, the minute you start to call communities hotspots, you have attached a stigma to that community. We have on numerous occasions spoken here about how there are different kinds of crimes. We just only look at violent crime because as far as we're concerned, only when we see bullet and blood and a body, right? So bullets, blood, body, that is when there's a crime. We don't stop to think about white collar crime, right? And let me talk about it. Let me pronounce it properly. White collar and white collar crime. We don't talk about that kind of crime at all. We don't talk about how people who bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars in drugs, who bringing in guns, who importing, exporting, and trafficking human beings when the day come in various forms and fashion. We don't talk about how those things does impact on bullets, bodies, and blood. We don't talk about anything at all. Because for us to talk about those things, we have to admit that there are communities here and people within communities here who just be doing things that they ain't supposed to be doing. We don't talk about the fact that people just be thieving from the treasury level. Is I just had to come and sit down here and talk about the treasury totots and who's sucking and hang on to the treasury totots. Is I just had to come and sit down here and talk about how people are illegally accessing money from the treasury when the day come. Whether it is through complicit public servants or complicit politicians, right? That is the kind of thing we just sit down here and talk. So I put up a post to say, steer clear of the Hoth Spoth. Now I can understand that people would have been emotionally distraught and upset over the fact that somebody had been killed. I can totally understand that. And condolences go out to persons who have lost loved ones on that day. Both the victims and the persons who are alleged to be aggressors and part of the assault, right? Because people lost people on that day. And me vex me here trying to, I'm not here dealing with that, right? People lost loved ones on that day. What I was looking at and the point that my post was making at that point in time is Westmoreland had criminal activity occurring there. And if it was a different community, if it was La Puerta, if it was Covine, if it was Bagatelle, right? If it was East Port of Spain, if it was Laqueta, not La Hoquette, right? If it was Laqueta and Malabar and Maloney, if it was Cocorite, we would have said, hey, all you'd have a shooting in that hot spot. That is what we would have said, right? It have a shooting in the hot spot. All you watch out, don't pass day because you ain't know what go happen. Bullet, this, that, and the other. So I can't come and say that about Westmoreland. So, because my role when the day come is teaching, I just spend the majority of the hours of my life teaching. I say, you know what? Let me come here this evening and teach a lesson in what is a Hoth Spoth. So, let me talk the things. I'll have a couple minutes, spend a couple minutes with me, because you see right now, this is my verse for the Northwest stand, right? People in the Northwest Peninsula who was up in the fields, people who upset that I add a TH at the end of the word Hoth and a TH at the end of the word Spoth, right? This is my verse for you, right? This is my verse for you. I hope you all enjoy my Kaiso this evening. So let me find the things that I feel the need to talk right now. And you know me, I don't like to talk thing unless it has information. So I pick up my goodly self, because as a woman like my research, I not dunce. I did not waste state education. That is not me. I is not a waste state education type of girl at all. And I realize when things fall in people garden last week Thursday, it burned them. Oh God, they ball out because it burned them. So there we go. I went and I looked for research. And I looked for recent research. Me look for old research. So 2018, the last time the paper got modified was 2019. I get the research. Hoth Spoths Policing, written by Tammy Kochel and Savan Nouri. So if all you want, all you could go and pull it up for yourself as well. Please send it to the persons from the various Hoth Spoths in Trinidad and Tobago who don't read. So because they don't read, them don't know. They don't know the things and they feel, I mustn't come here and talk the things. Let me tell you something. All you climbing up and barking up the wrong tree with me, you know. I's not a person have all you to take on because all you figure, all you a little color. And because people are accustomed to bowing down to all you when the day come, all you start to feel that everybody must bow down to all you. I bows to nobody. I bows to nobody. Right? Good. So let's sit down there. Tie up all yourself with me. So that's the name of the article. Let me show you what they say Hoth Spoths mean. Right? And so when all you see what they say, what the definition of Hoth Spoth mean, you will realize that I was not making it up. So let me go. Bouncy starter. Hoth Spoths. Policing that entails police efforts at crime prevention in a very small geographic area where crime concentrates. Olia, let me reread this for you all so that you understand what a hotspot is. Hotspot policing entails focusing police efforts at crime prevention in a very small geographic area where crime concentrates. I am privy to the email loop that has taken place in plenty of these gated communities. Because all of these gated communities have mailing lists, right? And it is be sending out messages to one another when the day come. You know what is one of the major things that is be emailing wrong when the day come? Telling one another to look out and watch out for any possible criminal activity in the area. Now we in Trinidad and Tobago so full of hypocrisy. And Carnival is one of the times of the year where we hypocrisy does be on full display. I come into the other kinds of hypocrisy just now. In these communities, crime is a major fear. A major fear. That is why in these communities, plenty of them just have 1, 2, and 3 set of security gate to pass through. You're trying to get in to go and drop off something by somebody, you have to stop by a security. You have to tell the security your name. You have to tell the security where you're going to. The security have to write down your car number. Listen, it has security guard in this country that know more about me than man I was with. It have man I was with who ain't know my whole name yet, and they don't know my car number. But it have security in this Trinidad and Tobago know my whole name and know the vehicle that I drive in. Why? Because in certain communities in this here Trinidad and Tobago, in the Northwest Peninsula, they need all the information once you're coming into the community, right? All the information. And thing always circulating on WhatsApp chat. So it have WhatsApp chat and it have mailing group, and everything is to do with whether or not there is criminal activity. So when you are in a community like that, where people constantly on the alert where crime is concerned, crime is clearly an issue for them. Clearly an issue for them. But we don't call those communities hotspots. As a matter of fact, what we have done for them, the kind of policing we have done for them, is policing called Citizen Comfort Patrol. All you remember that? All you remember Citizen Comfort Patrol? In communities that have 3,000 gates manned by 20,000 security guard, where the security company also doing surveillance, we had Citizen Comfort Patrol. Not for the communities that we are seeing in police statistics on a regular basis, dealing up with all the crime, you know. No. In these smaller elite enclaves, there was Citizen Comfort Patrol. So Valsayn had Citizen Comfort Patrol, and the very stush communities that I live close to, Citizen Comfort Patrol, right? These communities have people in it that live in mortal fear of anything my complexion, right? Mortal fear of anything my complexion. Worse yet, if you are my complexion and you're walking around with a penis. The only thing they're afraid more than black women is black men. Right? That's how these communities dysfunction. And you see, if he is a young black male, oh my goodness, is now self-defraid. So if you are in a community on a daily basis where you are living in constant fear of black people and young black men, right? So black people in general, young black men specifically, and you have watch group, you have watchdog, you have watch guard, you have watch gate, and you have police patrolling all the time. Why am I not supposed to think that you are a Hoth Spoth? Why do you assume that I must assume that is only other communities are Hoth Spots? Because you always worried about crime. So if you always worried about crime, does that not mean that you think that you are a target for crime and criminal activity? Of course that's what it means. But let's look at a little bit more data, just a little bit more information. I want to overload all you right now, right? A little bit more information. No, listen, I'll get me Hoth with this one, you know. Hoth. I have to cool that down, right? So, theory and basis of hotspot policing. Let me add myself and smallen up myself. So hotspots policing is built upon theories about crime at places or other small geographic area. And according to the research article, places have criminal careers, much like offenders do. So you have communities here that are worried about crime happening to them all the time. You also have communities from whence cometh the crime. Now the way we just deal up with hotspots here is because all you know me, I'm not a woman that just come and sit down here and talk to you just so. I spoke to a former commissioner of police, right? So I spoke to a former commissioner of police to understand, to have a sense of how hotspot policing would have been dealt with. And how it would have been dealt with, certainly under Kamla Prasad Bisesa and them, when they were dealing up with things, is they would pick and choose, or they would look at communities from where plenty crime was taking place. And they would send the police there. That is how they was dealing up with hotspot policing. And I want all you to understand this. When you label a community a hotspot, you attach a number of stigmas to that community. Because it is not just the criminals in that community that get labeled and targeted, right? Not just the criminals from the community. You know who else does get labeled and targeted? The innocent members of the community. So if you live in La Puerta, you live in Covina, you live in Bagatelle, and you have done nothing your entire life but obey laws and keep yourself to yourself and mind your and drink water and mind your business, you are still labeled as somebody from a hotspot. When you have to apply for jobs, you are labeled as somebody from a hotspot. The home, the property that you would have bought and spent money on and upgrading it and doing all that loses property value because people have decided to label your community as a hotspot. And so things like those labels and those stigmas drop the value of your property. Right? But the people who labeling you hotspot, they may stopping to think about them kinds of things at all. They are also not stopping to think that in these communities that are not labeled as hotspot, you might have people who are criminals or who are known to the police. So let's talk about that. Because one of the ways you will go about determining that a place is a hotspot. Oh my goodness, this not opening up, boy. Why this not opening up? You know what? I'm gonna go on to Google Chrome and do a quick search here for an image. One of the ways you will decide that a place is a hotspot is if you have people known to the police living in the area, right? All you agree with me? If you have people who known to the police living in a particular area, you're going to be thinking to somebody who has been charged with a crime, especially a big crime. Let me say a crime where hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe close to $1 billion was stolen. Would you think that if you have somebody who living in a community, right, and they thief that much money, or they have been accused of having stolen that much money, would you think that that place is a hotspot? Would you think, well, somebody who known to the police living up inside here, that place is a hotspot? Yeah, there's a possibility you might think that. Let me show you somebody who living in that community. So imagine a situation where you had a shootout. Me didn't know who shoot, me didn't know who get shot. But I know the community. And I know of at least one resident in the community. And I know this is one resident who known to the police and facing charges 20 years now. And I call the place a Hoth Spoths and people up in the fields. Up in the whole fields, you know. Buy a journal, write down how you felt about it in the journal. And then when you finish, write down how you felt about it in the journal. Go and research hotspots and what makes a hotspot a hotspot. And then then pause and think to yourself. Who gets to label things around here? Who does get to apply labels here? Is it fair that we apply labels and broad brush people in a particular way? Is it fair that every single time we are applying these labels, we just be applying these negative labels to the same community over and over again? Pause and ask yourself why it hurt you so much to have your community be labeled as a hotspot, right? Pause and ask yourself that. You up in your fields, you ain't start to feel fields yet. Because if you was that hurt about a community that you think is not a hotspot being labeled as a hotspot, imagine how other people just feel about their communities being labeled in that way, right? Pause and think about it. It burning yet? Nah, it ain't start to burn only enough. Or you have to buy cream for wherever it is burning only right about now. Because me a business. I was being very sarcastic. Very, very, very sarcastic. And I am often very sarcastic because I understand how language gets used. I understand how language can be used to abuse people and to oppress people. And you see me, If it's one person know how to use language, if it's one person know how to take words and twist it, it's me. So I wasn't unaware, right, that Hoth Spot would cause people to be upset. But I didn't think that people would have been so upset that they would show their whole backside on Facebook. Because all you come on my posts and reveal all your whole racist self with all of the comments. At no point in time did I speak about any person or any individual. Up to now, me call nobody name on the thread. Up to now, me call nobody name on a post. Up to now, me refer to a victim or to an assailant. Nothing like that took place on any of my threads. But all you're hurting, it bun. Ain't? Good. I'm glad it bun. Stop and study that the next time while you're calling other communities hotspots. Stop and think about how other communities just feel about being labeled and stigmatized. And the same, listen, all it is label and stigmatize communities, and all you know, all you're doing things to cause crime in these communities, that is the thing that is bothering me. I was coming here this evening to go through a whole long history of all of the various crimes that take place in the Northwest Peninsula. The drug bust in Monas, Eddie Curry head in a field somewhere, he body in the back of a trunk, he head somewhere else. I was coming here to go story after story after story after story after story to show cocaine in juice can, all kind of thing that everybody hide and talk thing behind their mouth and get on as if drugs, guns, trafficking, violence, this only take place in certain communities. It do ever take place by all you. And all it does never want to talk about the things that all they're doing that lead into to violent criminal activity in other communities. Well, all you want to talk about it, I will talk about it. I will sit down right here and talk about it. I will point out at every single turn how blasted hypocritical you all are. And the 1 minute somebody turn around and point out all your hypocrisy, all your up and all your feels, get some wonder the world leave. As the most I can tell all you, get some wonder the world leave, because trust and believe is plenty bruising and swelling all you're going to have to deal up with. Now, I want to move on to another bit of hypocrisy. Let's look at some more hypocrisy from us here in Trinidad and Tobago. Let me see if I can... That loud boy. Listen, let me tell you something. All you know how to zest, all you feel all you know how to zest. But let me go. I had to lower this volume here a little bit. Well, I thought we were supposed to have these kind of gatherings taking place. What is really going on here? Is it that soca kills COVID? Chlorine kills COVID? 5 islands just kill COVID? When COVID see voice in our short pants, COVID is just disappear? What is really went on this last week? Zest after zest after zest after zest. And the police dealing up with zest in a very, very, very weird way, indiscriminate way. And I think one of the major issues I have since this pandemic start is the imbalanced application of the public health ordinance. So I really feel that the Lord of Loopholes, Faris Al-Rari, needs to explain to people exactly what does the public health ordinance mean and exactly what is a safe zone and what exactly is supposed to happen in a safe zone. Because I hear it had fete in Queen's Hall this morning, nobody was in mask. As a matter of fact, I hear that the DJ tell people leave all your pod and come in front of the stage, and humans left their pods and went in front of the stage. Right? I have been seeing, with St. Paul Street, a whole block in St. Paul Street. And then poor people in Arima, in Samaru village in Arima, having the zest, and police reach and mash up the zest. So I figure, well, maybe if they had the zest next to our pool. Again, our hypocrisy. Total hypocrisy here. Now, I understand, listen, me vex with people for wanting to enjoy themselves. I understand how 2 years of lockdown could be grating on you. I understand how 2 years of lockdown have you feeling like you just want to run like Lego beast somewhere. But oh geez and ages. Is it that we're trying to test the healthcare system? Is it that we're trying to see how much we could spike numbers and how much we could spike deaths within the next 2 to 3 weeks? What kind of madness is this? This is total foolishness. Total foolishness. That's a voice video. This morning when I show people the Iowa video, you know, it had people who turn around and tell me, you know, Trinidadians really is the greatest sinner. People turn around and tell me that I come and bring old video and that's not what really take place and that's a video from 20 whenever. Oh. Let me show you this video. People watch me in my face and tell me I'm making up this video. So let me get this clear. We have decided that at this point where we 50% vaccinated and children ready to head back out to school, we ain't give 2 hours. We ain't give 2 hours at all. That is the level of selfish we reach at now. Vulnerable people, people who not in a position to actually be vaccinated, and little children just had to suffer because we grown-ups, we need to zest. We had a zest. If we ain't zest, that is it. Is zest or dead? I looked at these videos and I said to myself, we on real foolishness as a people. We on real shit. Beer shit. Because what this is an example, a good working example of how selfish and self-centered we have become as a people. This didn't have to happen. As much as the public health ordinance written in a very vague and imbalanced way, this didn't have to happen. We could have taken choices as individuals to not do this foolishness. We could have still go out and enjoy ourselves, you know, put on masks, keep some distance. But we decide, caution to the wind. And I am so disappointed in us. I am incredibly disappointed in us. I had hoped that we would have been able to show ourselves and to show other people that we are capable of responsibility and we are capable of discipline. But what became very clear to me as I looked on, I realized that there's we motto. Allow me now. Just allow me. Allow me. Give me full allowance. Permanent law. Right? So I am perma law now. I just law. That's it. Just allow me. Whatever it is I want to do, just let me do it. That's what is going on here. I want to do it. Right? I come out to play. That's what is going on here. And so this is where I'm going to wrap up with you all folks. This is the end of my Dimashkra. I hope you all enjoyed my social commentary. I hope you all enjoyed my special verse for the Northwest stand. And I hope you all enjoyed the little wrap up there about the fete, etc., etc., etc. And I am hoping that you all try and have yourselves a happy and safe carnival. You know, try and make it the safest carnival that we have now. 2022. Don't let nothing happen to nobody in 2022. Where we going? Right. So I gonna lock off now. All I heard from Peter Carter about bail for murder accused. You would have heard from Richard Ramdhanie giving his side of issues and events. And you would have heard me weigh in on a couple issues. Enjoy the rest of the week. Where the song, boy? This is the song I want to end. Stay safe.
We know business.
Declare the business.
No, we know business. Everybody get ready now. Everybody get ready now. Ready now.